here in Dubai, but it seems to be resolved now. So with a little luck, we'll be able to get through the material before the allotted time runs out. The first thing I'd like to do is just introduce myself. My name is Alan Power. I'm an associate consultant with Informa Middle East, but I won't waste any time by telling you anything else about me. I just have been doing this work for about 14 or 15 years and quite a bit of experience in delivering time management training courses. But let's quickly just go into the agenda. I've got several items on the agenda that I'd like to walk you through. First of all, I'd like to talk about the words time and management, what we mean by time management. Secondly, maybe just talk for a few minutes about the concept of time, the limits of time, why we need to stop wasting time. We also need to put time management into context. There's a bigger context than just the present minute or the present hour or the present day. We also need to find balance, the way we balance our time, the allocation of time. And we need to acknowledge that out of our investment in time, everybody wants the same thing. But what that thing is, I'll introduce to you a little later on. And then, of course, what we want to do is look at how things get in the way. What is it that stops us from actually using our time productively? And then we'll look at a few tips on maybe how we can address some of these things that get in the way. So first of all, time management. Let me just say, first of all, time management is about self-management. We don't manage time per se. What we do is manage ourselves. It's self-management or life management that most of us are looking to explore. Well, first of all, let's state the obvious. Time is our most precious resource. We would like to treat it as any precious resource. Nothing of our time, if possible, should be wasted. And remember also that time is quite relentless. It flows on continually at the same pace, just like this river in the picture here. As you can see with this river, there are no dams, there are no rapids, there are no waterfalls. Time just flows along as the water flows along this river. And once it's passed, it's lost. And once it's lost, it can't be regained. If you don't use time productively, then you're wasting it. You're wasting time. But unlike other wastes, unfortunately, time can't be recycled. You can't put time in a storage cupboard and take it out sometime later and then reuse it. It keeps moving on, and it keeps moving on to the inevitability of what arrives at the end of our time on Earth. To put it quite bluntly, it's when we die. And wouldn't it be good to think of the time in the future when we're coming to the end of our lives that we've looked back and we can say we've lived a happy life? And as Leonardo da Vinci once said, a well-spent day brings happy sleep, so a life well spent brings happy death. So happiness is important, and obviously sleep is important, and death is inevitable. So let's not be in a situation where we look back with lots of regrets and about the way we've used our time on this earth. But what I would like to start in the art of managing time is at the end. What I'd like people to do is manage their time in the context of a vision. We need visions. We need short-term and long-term visions. And as we cycle through the different stages of life, then our visions change. You can imagine a young person who is looking to a vision of going to university and having a great education. Maybe somebody who's out of university is looking to have a great job and enjoy work, and maybe meeting somebody, getting married, having children, and so on. Older people will maybe no doubt looking towards retirement. So it doesn't matter what your horizon is, you need a vision, and a vision puts context into what you're planning to do with your time today, tomorrow, next week. But what we need to do is look at a vision in terms of a set of goals. So what we would like to do, I guess, is to have our life goals well mapped out for us. And those life goals may, I mean, your particular series of goals may be different to this, but things like health and fitness, business and career, the fun and recreation, personal growth, and so on, are some of the typical life goals that people will articulate when they're thinking about time management. And so what we would do is, having had a set of life goals, which when achieved will achieve our vision, we need a plan for each one of them. We need to be able to plan our business and our career. We need to plan fun and recreation. We need to plan personal growth and health and fitness. And although you can see here it's long-term planning is translated into short-term planning. Essentially, what are you going to do today to develop yourself as a person? What are you going to do today in terms of your health and fitness and developing your career and so on? But this is not an easy thing to do, obviously, and it's probably a good idea to track your goals. And one of the ways, or one of the tools you can do that, is to create one of these charts. It's a good tip to have a chart like this. You can use scales. Here we've got a scale of 1 to 10. You can develop your own scale. 1 to 10 is pretty typical. Some people use 1 to 5. But what you're trying to show using this particular chart is the progress that you're making towards achieving your goals, which once achieved will deliver your vision. So this is a method of establishing where you are now with regard to your goals, and then measuring and monitoring, maybe on a regular basis, what progress you're making towards your goal. So we'll be sending you this material, so you may be able to print off this particular chart, and you can use this to help you plan and manage your own time. But just let me return to a word that I've used a couple of times, and that is something called happiness. When planning time, most of us would think that it would be good that whatever we do with our lives brings happiness to us. And there's a bit of a model here that I just like to share with you, because on the other side of the equation from happiness is the potential of pain or unhappiness. And if you look at what it is that makes up happiness and what potentially makes up unhappiness, we've got the words pleasure and pain. So you can see I've actually put pleasure in green and I've put pain in red on the basis that a green number is a good number and a red number is a bad number. But what we're suggesting is that there's a scale, and there's a scale which is about pleasure at one end of the scale and pain at the other. Pain bringing you unhappiness and pleasure potentially bringing you happiness. But it isn't that simple. It isn't that simple at all, because happiness is not just made up with pleasurable activity. It's also made up with purposeful activity, doing things that have a purpose to them, that you feel are worthwhile doing. And the opposite to doing things that are purposeful are doing things that you believe are quite pointless. So these two red and green items are opposed forces, if you like. But unfortunately, it's not quite that simple. It's not quite that simple, because pointlessness actually can sometimes lead to pleasure. You can think about some pointless activities that you may need to do now that might actually lead you to feeling a sense of pleasure in the future. And similarly with pain, you may be able to sacrifice some painful activity for some end result, which is purposefulness. I mean, for this one, think athlete. Think of an athlete that's going to the gym every morning, going through the pain barrier to improve their levels of fitness, to improve their speed, maybe if they're a runner, and that actually can have some purpose to it. And what we also want to do is to make sure that, quite frankly, We use our understanding of what is pleasurable to plan our time to increase the time that we spend on pleasurable activities, and obviously if we can reduce the time of feeling that there is pain in our life. And it's the same at the other end of the chart. If you look at the bottom, what we're wanting to do when managing our time is to manage it so that we increase the amount of time that we're engaged in purposeful activity, and obviously reduce the amount of time when we're engaged in activities that don't seem to have any purpose at all. So keep those things in mind. Keep the fact that you need a vision. Keep the fact that the vision needs to be broken down into a set of goals. Think about happiness and about making your life more pleasurable and more purposeful. And that would be I guess the continuing theme of any time management program. But also we need to know, what gets in the way, because there are barriers. What gets in the way to you using your time for pleasurable or purposeful activities? There are a number of people that we can call time wasters, the culprits who steal your time from you. And it's not just people. There are lots of other things that steal your time. Yourself, poorly run meetings, not planning your activities, not planning your meetings well, interruptions of telephones, always accessing my emails, looking at your emails often, or maybe exploring your WhatsApp or other social media, all of which is not really contributing too much to your job or to your life, but is just a distraction. So let's just look at some other things that we could do to use our time effectively. And we will explore this in the training courses that we offer. One could be to consolidate similar tasks so that a whole range of tasks can be managed more efficiently if they're consolidated. If you can tackle the tough jobs first, the problem in not doing that, of course, is that the tough jobs are the ones that are stuck at the front of your mind. And if you don't get them out the way, they stop you focusing on other, maybe less tough jobs to be done. So do them first and get them out of the way and stop them interfering with your thinking processes. Obviously, we can delegate to other people. Delegation, no doubt, requires others to be developed. So develop other people, invest your time in other people's development, and that gives you the opportunity of delegating to them and making yourself more productive. Learn to use the idle time. Idle time would be, a good example would be if you're ever on public transport, if you're on a metro in Dubai, you're on a train or a boat or a plane traveling to somewhere. That could be idle time, but it could be time that could be used usefully to make yourself more productive. Getting control of the paper. I know we have less paper nowadays than we used to, but having paper coming into you in huge amounts of batches, so you've got a foot of paper in your in tray, is quite daunting and is actually destroys motivation. Avoid the cluttered desk syndrome if you don't already have it. Institute a clear desk policy. Cluttered desks mean it's very difficult to find things, and if you're looking for something, well, looking itself is wasting time. I've already mentioned meetings. Obviously, if you can reduce meetings, the way of reducing meetings is to make sure that everybody understands the purpose of the meeting and to have an agenda so that the agenda is focusing on the important items. Probably one good tip actually is to, when you're holding a meeting, don't allow people to sit down. Have everybody stand up. Then they don't get comfortable, because when they get comfortable, they relax and they start chatting about things that may be not about the purpose of the meeting. I've tried it myself and it works. Anyway, have a think about it. Just a tip. Also, learn to say no. don't start trying to come up with all sorts of excuses, beating about the bush and so on. When there's a requirement for somebody to say this is not going to happen, well, let's say it clearly. Let's say no to what we're discussing and let's move on and find a more interesting thing to spend our time with. Another tip is to, if you have an office, don't position your table, your desk or your chair so that you face the door. An open door with somebody behind it facing the door invites distractions. You can see through the door, you can see other people, you can hear things, and it also invites people to walk in. I know it's popular nowadays for people to say, I have an open door policy. Well, you need to make sure that if it is an open door policy, it isn't open to distractions. When engaging with communications with people, try and leave specific messages when you're answering an answer phone or an answering machine, saying exactly why you're calling, what you expect as a consequence of the call, and maybe if you require a call back, include when you can be reached, a date and a time for the return call. Obviously, one of the time stealers is the people who tend to avoid getting to the point. They beat about the bush. They're not specific about what it is that they want to ask you. If that happens, if people do beat about the bush, one of the tips that I may offer you is that you just say to them, what can I do to help? Just saying, what can I do to help, tends to stop them, and invariably they get straight to the point and explain what it is they want from you. I suggest one or two other tips would be things like taking coffee breaks at unpopular times. Obviously, if you take a coffee break, you have a coffee area and you take a break at popular times, then there's lots of opportunities for distractions from catching up with people and getting involved with gossip. Obviously, gossip sometimes is important, and sometimes you need to be around where people are gossiping, and the grapevine is running rife. But avoid it if you can. You probably heard this one before. If your employees come to you with a problem, always make them in the future come to you with not just a problem, but the recommendations for a solution. This is a problem, this is what I recommend we do, because that's a very short conversation, particularly if the answer is yes, go ahead. Not a bad idea is to keep clocks in prominent places so that there is a place where people can focus on how the time is passing, and everybody, I think, is attempting to use their time efficiently. So a prominent clock helps them to keep the time in mind. Sorting mails into actions, future actions, background, junk, and so on is one tip. I do 30 minutes every morning, 30 minutes every afternoon. They're the only times when I look at my emails, because what I do is I allocate them, future actions, background, and junk, and so on. And then I plan to deal with the action items through the day by putting them into my diary. Here's something that's maybe of interest to you, but I won't go through it because obviously we're a bit short of time, but this might be of some interest to those of you who are thinking about any research. There is some research that's quite frightening. Time-wasting activities on the job. You can see here the personal use of internet. Such internet accounts for almost half of people's work time. If you could stop that happening, you're going to increase your productivity by nearly 50%, which is quite an opportunity. So let me just get back to the emails. And I mentioned the fact that I schedule my emails so that they're dealt with as a diary item. And this is quite an interesting 4-box model that was developed by President Eisenhower a long time ago, before the time that emails blighted our lives. But you can see here that what Eisenhower did was looked at what was important and not important and what was urgent and not urgent. And so in the top left-hand box, we have things that are both important and urgent, which he said you should do them, particularly if there are things that you can do very quickly, 2 or 3 minutes. If something is in the bottom left-hand box, it might be urgent, but it's not that important. Maybe you can consider delegating, or maybe doing it later. Or top right-hand corner, things that are important are not urgent. Then you can make decisions about when you can schedule time to do these items. And then the last item in the box is the one in the bottom right-hand corner, which is not important and not urgent. And if it's an email, you can just hit the delete button. Okay, the other, I guess, time stealer is procrastination, putting off things that we should do today until sometime in the future. That's a bit like creating big dams in a river. You're just creating lots of inventory. You're creating lots of pressure on yourself. And in the end, if you procrastinate and store lots of actions to do in a very, very short term of time, you're probably not going to focus sufficiently on each one and maybe not do them to the best of your ability. So procrastination, do things now that need to be done now and don't put them off for another time. So that's just very briefly some of the things that we would recommend in terms of tips for you to help use your time more productively. Our time management course covers many subjects, and here is a list of the important ones. Again, I don't plan to go through them with you, but you can see in the bottom right-hand quadrant there what we've got is a segment. What we've got is email management, and we will spend some time using or learning how to use Outlook in a more advanced format so that we can use it to help us manage our time more effectively. So I know we are essentially run out of time because we scheduled this for 4:30, but if anybody does have a question that we can answer quickly, maybe you could pose that question now. Okay, I can't see. I can see several questions here at the moment, but maybe I'll just pick one, which is actually it's something I've already covered, and it's essentially about dealing with people who waste your time, who come into your office for a chat. And I think the suggestion that I would make in those circumstances is that you have to be particularly blunt with people, and you have to sometimes say to them, look, how can I help you? Now, if this is your boss, it's a little more difficult, but even your boss has got to be shown that on some occasions, spending time speaking to the boss about something that's not particularly productive is actually taking your focus away from delivering the objectives that he may have set you. So just mentioning the fact that unless I get on with this, I'm at risk of not achieving one of my objectives. Okay, somebody is also asking here, if you're a new starter at a company, how can you implement the saying no approach without appearing unenthusiastic? Well, okay, that's a good question, I think, because anybody who's in a situation where they're trying to impress, they just joined a new organization and they're in that period where they're unsure about things, then maybe it's not a good time to be saying no. That could be the time where you need to be a little more compliant and a little less assertive. What you need to do is build your confidence for a period of time. Once you've actually built that confidence, then maybe you can start to be a little more assertive and start saying no. There's another question from Rashmi. How should planning be done to manage work efficiently, weekly, daily? Well, yes, the answer is weekly and daily. It could almost be hourly or even minute by minute, but it's also monthly and it's annually. And it's when you're looking at a vision, it could be over a time horizon that may be several years. So as I said, a time horizon, the end of a time horizon, you have a vision. That vision actually could be broken down to a series of goals. Those goals are reviewed annually, and you plan to achieve certain elements, certain aspects of those goals, maybe on a monthly, weekly, or a daily basis. You know, if you're planning long-term for your retirement, one of the things that you might want to plan to do is to play golf when you retire. So if you don't play golf, there's lots of things that you've got to do. You've got to learn golf. You've got to join a golf club. You've got to buy golf equipment. Yeah, and all those things can be contained in a short-term plan over the next several months, but it's in the context of the long-term plan, which is about facilitating your retirement. But it could be that what you want to do this evening is to go and practice your putting, and all of those things will go in your diary. So it's, you know, it's over years, it's annually, it's monthly, it's weekly and daily, and you should have that level of planning in your diary system. Okay, I understand there's an integrating governance, risk management and compliance webinar that's going to begin shortly. So if you're interested in that, please look for the webinar recording on the Informal website. Okay. Always I try my best to manage my time, but never do while I have kids. All right, with different ages. All right, okay. I'm in the same boat myself. I've got kids of different ages, and usually when they're of different gender, the boys want to do something different to the girls. That's really a struggle. I believe in dividing and conquering. So dad looks after managing the time with the boys, and mum looks after the times managing the girls. I mean, maybe it could be the other way around, but really that's a tough one. And my tip actually, I guess, is to try and work with the children so you can develop a consensus about what we're all going to do together. Family time, consensus, not compromise. Okay, I think we've probably come to the end of the questions. There may be more, but there is a question that I was going to answer anyway, and that question says, can I get a copy of the presentation? And yes, of course you can. You will be able to get a copy. In fact, it's going to be sent to you sometime soon, but it's also going to be sent to you with a survey, and the survey is going to ask you how you enjoyed the seminar. And let me apologize again for it being late. And it'll also give us some idea about whether there is an appetite for running time management courses here in the Middle East. So I'd be very grateful if you would complete the seminar, the survey, and indeed let us know if attending a time management course is something that you'd like to put in your diary for the future. So anyway, good luck with your time planning, and maybe we'll touch base sometime in the not too distant future on a course in Dubai. Thank you and good night.